Talk to me. Talk to me. If you feel the need or when you need to feel it, talk to me. If you feel the need or when you need to feel it, talk to me.
Hello everyone, I'm Timothy Go. Welcome to That's IT. In the make-believe world of movie making, it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not. And moviegoers have come to expect this. Digitally enhanced realism. Why settle for mundane reality when you can have something better? A carriage drawn by magnificent Pegasus-like creatures. A digitally enhanced red cape superhero. Scenes created totally out of the imagination. All made possible by visual effects technology.
When we talk about visual effects, we talk about things like the Hollywood blockbusters, Pirates of the Caribbean and those sorts of things. And a lot of the time those effects are either what the movie is about, we've blown up the world, or we've, gone under the ocean, or things that we as people can't ever experience. And it lets Hollywood tell us the story.
One of the tricks of visual effects is blending what's real from what's not, mixing shots taken by a camera to those generated by a computer.
Tell me everything.
Some of these are so well done that I couldn't tell the difference. To achieve this, digital artists use post-production tools like 3ds Max and Maya. These help bring the magic to the silver screen.
If you look back, let's say 6 or 7 years, we saw movies where you'd see this enormous explosion, the destruction of the earth, or the sun, or whatever it may have been, and that was the big budget shot for the movie. And you may have had 20 or 30 or maybe 100 visual effects in the movie, but there was one hero shot. Now the whole movie is the hero shot. We've gone away from being able to satisfy an audience with one big explosion. We now have to have everything constantly going throughout the movie.
I got a taste of what it's like, being digitally enhanced, that is. My visual was treated using Luster, a color grading system created by software company Autodesk.
There are many stages to the color correction. One is the overall color treatment. I will change the overall tone and color of the image. Then I will go and pick specific areas. For example, I might pick just Tim's face and change the skin tone, or I might just pick the background and change the background where he's sitting or standing.
Allow me to introduce my
favorite cinematic treat is still animated features. These days, characters have become so lifelike that I sometimes forget they're wholly created by computers.
It's those little nuances that the animators add that make the story more believable. You may not consciously see them, but it's the subconscious that makes you believe that you're in an environment, in a world that could possibly be real.
Of course, Hollywood has the financial muscles to create stunning effects to enthrall viewers, but big budget is not always necessary. Singapore filmmaker Rich Ho made his short film Alien Invasion with very little money by using open source freeware.
Most of it was from open source because, number one, they were in alpha beta stages, though it's unstable, but they actually fulfill purposes, specific purposes, and combining all these open source wares actually gives you one massive software. Though there's uncertainty, but it's worth taking the risk because it's something that is created in a way that the world has not seen yet, be it in Hollywood or in other studios. The difficult part was actually to know what it means to create unreal special effects. And I do not want it to be a very serious kind, where people appreciate visuals and they get so serious that this is a real flying saucer and all that stuff. That defeats the purpose. I want it to be fun. I want it to have a certain element that we are having an adventure, and this is a fake adventure, and so I'm able to laugh at things and bring out the hilarity of it all.
Despite not having the technical training, this intrepid director is able to put together his meager digital resources to achieve the desired effect, even for difficult scenes like the aliens attack.
So for this scene where the archers are actually, in the real life, actually they're not shooting any arrows at all. So what happens is that I have to actually delete away all their arrows and replace these arrows with virtual arrows that will actually fly. Okay, this is one of the battle scenes where the archer actually fires into this whole mess of chaotic action that's taking place with all the flying saucers in the background and all the fighting. You can see these people, the rest of his friends fighting actually. So the first one that I had to shoot actually was in the outdoor to create him alone together with two guys standing up and holding up the green screen against a blank sky. You can see it with the virtual arrow that will fire to the sky from here, react with the 3D clouds, and cause the explosion on top.
Alien Invasion has been well received by audience abroad during its tour in the past 2 years. Next month, Ho will release the short film online, free for all to download. He's now working on another project, a feature film set in Singapore in the 1970s. And this time his challenge is to create buildings that are no longer around.
I try to use textures and as well as the foliage, to match whatever they had seen in my father's old photographs, and then recreate the buildings like National Theatre, the Happy World, National Library. I shot the actor first on a green screen, and had measured, I wanted the lighting to come from the front. And after that, I would key the actor out. And so now only the actor is remaining in the scene. And using software, I recreated the National Theatre in the background. And of course, the National Library, which I wanted him to drive into, has been demolished a few months before filming. So using the same process, I recreated the National Library.
Animation and visual effects have permeated many aspects of digital production, dazzling and wooing audiences around the world.
Let me off! Don't let go! I'm gonna be sick!
It's a language without words, understood by all.
With the younger generation, echoing the mantra, bigger is better, and digital effects are cool. This is where we see the trend.
Yes, visual effect is pure entertainment, but that's what the movie business is all about, isn't it? After the break, we'll look at the magic of visual technologies in computer games. So don't go anywhere.
Talk to me.
The 1997 Asian financial turbulence dragged Malaysia into its worst political and economic crisis in history.
The founders, like myself, had to settle salary about 200 ringgit a month.
The political fallout.
I was not able to just sign out away 2 billion ringgit to the Sun's company.
The economic response.
The risk was big, but it was a calculated risk.
Asia rebounds tonight at 9:30.
Talk to me.
Visual effects in animation and movies does enhance our viewing pleasure, but just imagine how cool it will be if we could not only watch, but interact with a digitally enhanced reality. Welcome to the next generation of computer games.
The world doesn't need a savior, and neither do I.
Is this Superman Returns the movie, or is it the computer game? For avid fans of the Man of Steel, the action-adventure doesn't have to end in the cinema. It can continue at home, on the PC or game console. Impressed by the visual effects? Then you'll be happy to know that both the game and the movie use the same tools to create the visual treat. But it's a pity, where realism is concerned, the gaming industry still lags far behind Hollywood.
Even though the game developers as well as the movie industry have access to the same set of tools that produces special effects, we are not able to, as successfully as the movie people, translate this special effect that's created on those tools into our media. And that's got to do with the platform that we have available to us. The PC has its limitations, as do the current generation console.
But the gap is narrowing. Higher processing power means the next generation games will no longer be bound by constraints of hardware.
For example, a car crashing, right? In previous generation, because of limitations, the car always crashed the same way, right? In next gen, the car will be able to crash in multiple ways depending on whether they are hitting a still object or a moving object. So I think consumers will feel like they are really in a real world. At the end of the day, the area which we will focus most is the environment around the gamer, right? How do you create, trees that look like real trees? How do you create an effect where a user is shooting a gun, hits a tree, and leaves a bullet mark on the tree?
But it's a challenge to create a gaming environment that exudes realism, yet is based on pure fantasy. A good game has to look good. It has to sound right. And like a good movie, it has to have a compelling storyline and, of course, immersive gameplay.
We address the same demographic, the same audience as the movie people, right? They like to have great gameplay, but they want all the realism in their gameplay as well. This is our next gen game, so you can see, just at one glance, you can see how next gen offers a lot more than the current gen. That's the player, right? You can see sweat dripping down his brow, right? Sometimes you find yourself having to just stop short and just, am I watching TV or is this a game, right? So I think it's pretty lifelike. It'll get only better as our programmers and developers become more familiar with the hardware available to us.
Making games as lifelike as possible, as in the movies, is the next big trend in the gaming industry. But this man, founder of the biggest independent gaming company in Singapore, believes that looking real is no longer enough. An avid gamer himself, he knows that the gaming industry cannot hope to compete unless it can offer more.
We compete with everybody. We compete with the books you can read. Anything that can divert your attention away from our screen is our possible competitor. So we have to be offering more than what other media is offering. There was a time till which this industry was building up towards realism, and suddenly we realized that realism is passé, right? And people don't want to see realistic stuff anymore. They want it to be more exciting than real life. It has to be more over the top. It has to be something that they don't feel that they can experience anymore.
Today's computing power can make that possible, bringing what's better than the real to reality, at least on our game console.
Up till now, we've needed our imagination to fill in the gaps of what the technology was not capable of doing. We've done that. We've done a very credible job of that. I guess what we will be able to do in the future is incite emotion from these effects. We will be able to incite a feeling of not only simulation, not only of excitement from our audience, so we will actually be able to incite a feeling of emotion and on a much more deeper level, we will be able to engage the players.
Today, many game developers are employing visual effects specialists from Hollywood to enhance the digital realism of gameplay. This is not to be taken lightly. Statistics show the game industry has already overtaken box office takings in the US and the rest of the world. And so when it comes to visual effects, what the gamers want, the gamers get.
I think we are serving a new set of customer today, right? Consumers in my generation were perfectly happy sticking a DVD into a player and just sitting back and watching it. But consumers of today, the youngsters of today that will be our consumers in future, they are quite different, right? They embrace technology so easily, and it's part of their life.
So never underestimate the power of eye candy. Visual effects may not be essential in a game, but when done right, can certainly help immerse a player in the adventure. Think of the next generation games as watching a blockbuster movie, but with you in the starring role. Who needs movie stars if we can be superheroes on our own? It may be predominant in games and movies, but visual effects have other non-entertainment uses too. We'll get into that after the break.
Talk to me.
Would you like to see your new home, your new school, or the newest shopping mall even before it's built? It is possible, you know. You don't even need your imagination or the blueprint. It can all be presented in 3D animation right before your very eyes, even before the first brick is laid. Urban planning, property development, and interior design. Too often, mega projects like these will take many years and loads of money to plan and build. And for the clients making the investment, looking at these models is just not good enough. They need something better to help them visualize what's going to be built. Architecturally trained Lee Hon Kit realizes the potential of this and set up VMW 7 years ago. Today, Hon Kit makes his business transforming 2D blueprints to 3D animated walkthroughs.
We can actually virtually walk through a space where it cannot be done before. We can virtually see how it would be in 3 years' time. We can virtually see outside to the environment where it's going to be built. So, in fact, all things are possible at the moment in design visualization. We can soar through the air in a bird's eye view. We can actually do a worm's eye view. Certain angles that a normal person would not be able, physically be able to see it. But those are the most interesting angles to take, and that's where the computer and the fun comes in.
Think of it as a virtual test run for an architect's design. While it may not be as glamorous, this creative animation does share the same roots as the games and the movies. But architectural visualization stops short of employing the creative license of the movie business because whatever is created virtually, in this case, must eventually be built.
We are a cross between what the movie are doing and what the gaming industry is doing. We can be very cinematic in terms of our visual animation and sequence. In a way, the tools we are using is similar. It's all virtual, so to speak. But what differentiates for us from the gaming and the movie is we are rooted to design and it's going to be built. So there is a reality and dimension to it. We can't fake that.
But while design visualization does not lie, it does enhance and highlight angles that present the architectural space at its best. Good visualization offers the viewer an aesthetic perception of the real from the eye of a design artist.
We're not doctoring the thing to be different. It is designed that way, but just that people might not see it the way we see it. It will present it to the best of the ability of the potential of this product, which in this case, architecture and spaces. And we need to enhance it to make people realize that there's this little extra special in terms of sparkles, in terms of details, in terms of design that is put into it that you might, at a glance just missed it out if you do not highlight it in our work.
Visualization can be used to explore how a building will fit in with the surrounding environment before it's built. Or to test interior design possibilities of a room or apartment with fly-throughs that cut through walls.
It's not about just showcasing the interior design, but the ideas that's been put into it. as in the walls can be moved or can be changed, and that somehow changed the whole spatial arrangement. So in the animation, we can actually move walls rather than just move furniture. Of course, we need the interior designer's input. So they'll give us layout plans like that, where they actually really allocate certain features like the movable walls, where the furniture is going to place, materials like fabric materials. And it will be, of course, helpful if they have actually sketches, where it's easier for us to interpret as to exactly how the spatial quality is perceived by the designers.
With tools like 3D Max and Maya, visual design artists could not only create what hasn't been built, it can also reconstruct what's already been destroyed.
There's a fantastic project in China where they're reconstructing ancient cities so that you can see exactly what they looked like back in the day, both colours and environments and people and structural functionality, how things work.
Still, before you get hooked into buying your next property by watching its animated walkthroughs, be warned. Design visualization often presents a project at its pristine state. Buildings or houses may look more mundane when they're finally built.
We're only as good as what architects provide into the design. Our job is actually to create movements, to see how the spaces are perceived when you walk through it. How can we evoke emotion?
Architectural visualization may indeed be the untainted visual creation. But given a choice, I'd rather see the perfect vision of what I'm putting my money into than to depend on my own imperfect imagination. And soon, we may be able to do more than just watch.
What we're experimenting now is actually a virtual walkthrough. So you can actually have a person to don on more like a gaming environment, but this is more real in a sense, to actually don on a pair of goggles and actually walk through a space, a virtual space that you can actually experience it very realistically.
Design visualization is likely to play a dominant part in the future landscape of architecture. It is, after all, the vehicle for the ideal vision, untainted, unobstructed, before reality sets in. Call it what you want, digital realism, hyper-realism, better than real. Just remember, it's all digitally enhanced. And at the end of the day, this is still the world we live in. I'm Timothy Go. That's it.
Talk to me. Talk to me. If you feel the need and when you need the feeling, talk to me. If you feel the need and when you need the feeling, talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. If you feel the need and when you need the feeling, talk to me. If you feel the need and when you need the feeling, talk to me.
Hello everyone, I'm Timothy Go and you're watching another episode of That's IT. Happens to be our last show for the season, but we're glad you can join us here this week because we're taking another journey to have a look at technologies that can help us get to our destination. It works under any weather, anytime, anywhere. I'm talking about the GPS, or the Global Positioning System. Jerome Wee is a big fan of GPS. He's been using it to get around for more than 20 years. This 48-year-old has his GPS receiver everywhere he goes, when he's motocrossing, hiking at the nature reserves, or scuba diving at sea.
When I go riding, at least you know whether you are riding around in circles or in the plantations or in the jungle. And also, I use it a lot for diving, and I mark all my dive sites so I can find it again anytime I go back there or at night, and especially at night, just to drop spot on this reef.
GPS works through a group of satellites that are constantly circling the Earth. By transmitting low-power radio signals, these satellites allow anyone with a GPS receiver to determine their location on the ground. This is established by marking down the 3 coordinates: longitude, latitude, and altitude.
There are satellites all around the Earth. Maybe, I think now there are 26, if I'm correct. 26 or 20. Some of them are being replaced. So at any one time or any point, you can get a maximum of 12 satellites as reception. So they're actually in an umbrella above the door where you are. So the best is to get them at 120 degrees apart.
We need a minimum of 4 satellites to get the value of the 3 coordinates. The more satellite signals we can receive, the more accurate the data will be.
You need to get a satellite lock to get a fix on your location. So when you go into urban canyons like Shenton Way, where there are tall buildings and your view of the sky is very limited, you find that either you lose your satellite lock or you don't get a fix at all, or your inaccurate fix, maybe 20, 30, 40 meters.
Besides tall buildings, a cloudy day or dense foliage may also block the path of the signals and increase the margin of error. Despite its limitations, GPS is a valuable tool for tracking and tracing. With data of the coordinates it receives, points can be plotted. This in turn becomes a reference for others who visit the place later on. That's how maps are built. Jerome, for instance, spends a lot of his free time trekking through Singapore and Johor to update their maps. He then uploads them onto the web, free for other GPS enthusiasts to use.
You just turn on the GPS, turn on the tracking, and it will plot for you the route as you travel. Right now I'm using a 1 second interval, so every 1 second it will give me a point. So as I travel, you will draw a line according to where I drive. And at the same time, if I see anything interesting that's not on my current map, like a POI, a point of interest, let's say it can be maybe a new hotel that just came up, okay, I'll just mark it down also. So I just have to remember whether it's on the left side of the road or right side of the road. Once that's done, I have to come back, upload the tracks and POIs into my computer, and then trace it from down there and add in all the waypoints that I collected.
Jerome's passion in mapping began when he was in the Navy. Not forgetting his roots, he is now drawing up a map to help others navigate the Singapore Straits.
When I'm on patrol, I know exactly where I am in regards to where the navigation is. If not, I have to rely on my radar operator. No doubt, I know the water's actually at wet on my hands, but it's always good to know where all the nearest dangers are, where's the nearest reef, So if he blasts me, I know exactly where I am. Especially when you're doing high-speed exercises at night in the streets, it makes a lot of difference. I don't have to rely on radar on the radar plotter.
GPS technology has changed the way we find our way around on land and at sea. It helps us get to places faster. I think it's a great travel aid and something I'd like to play with myself.
If I'm looking for a GPS machine, which product would you suggest?
How would you want to use it?
Someone who's always getting lost.
Oh, wow. In the city?
Yep.
This is the device here, which is very newly launched and has got all the detailed maps of Singapore at the moment, and also lots of details about restaurants, lodging, fuel, and you can also mark the other positions like places that you want to go back to.
So where does it get its information from?
Oh, these are all the database gathered from the mapping companies. It depends on what unit, what comes with the unit you buy. Subsequently, if you want some other maps, then you have to pay for it. If you use it in Singapore, if you want to travel to Europe, you want European maps, or you want American maps, Australian maps, they are all available.
Mr. Yen, who's been selling GPS receivers for more than 10 years, told me that a GPS map shouldn't be too complicated.